So I'm going to go ahead and start this conversation. And maybe some other folks will wander in, and maybe they won't. But before I start the conversation, let me just say one thing. We have been in church the last 2 days. Amen. Amen. I am always amazed at the gift that is the worship services and the music that occurs at these events. And this one has been amazing, simply amazing. The goal here tonight, we want to talk about, we're going to ask everybody to use their imaginations. Because we want to reimagine the United Methodist Church. And we want to reimagine it as a church without the harmful language that we have today. We want to reimagine it as a church that has addressed or is working to address systemic issues of all kinds. We want to reimagine it as a church that doesn't have doors, as a church that meets communities where they need to be met, that does a lot of the things that we do in churches all over the country today, but we want to reimagine it. So the title is Reimagining, Reforming, Rebuilding in some order. It's late, so I don't know which order we actually put the title in. And we had originally planned a panel discussion, and we're going to do it a little differently than a panel discussion because we want to get folks out of here in time to go over to Cabana by 9 o'clock. So we're going to do 3 things. So first, I just want you to imagine that church. And imagine and think about if you were the one that got tapped to be a part of the team that was looking into what's next. What are we going to do and start building and start becoming on May the 16th, 2020? What would your input to that team be? So what just be thinking about that. I'm going to frame the conversation up with a couple of things. We have some people that are going to come up here and talk, so don't worry, you have to listen to me for 45 minutes. But we have some folks that are going to come up here and talk, and they're going to share from things that are already out there and talk about them and frame up what needs to happen. One of them is that Lonnie Chafin is going to come and share with us the thoughts behind one of the petitions that's a part of the Next Generation UC proposal that actually calls for a commission on the 21st century church. And what the thought process was behind that and what it does. And then, I don't know how many of you read it, but there was an article of Circuit Rider recently that many of us had articles in that commented on some of the various plans and things that were before the General Conference. And these 2 folks sitting up here to the right had an article in there that sort of made a first step at addressing what do we mean when we start talking about reform? I can't count how many conversations I've been in where I've said, oh yeah, we're going to have a broad reform. And then I make a note to myself, we have to go define that broad reform because I need to be able to follow that up with something concrete and not something that's made up out of my head. So Julius and Ginger wrote an article that was in the Circuit Rider. It recently came out in Ministry Matters as well. So I'm going to ask them to kind of share some of the thoughts behind that. And then we're going to get your input. So then I'm going to start, and we're just going to ask you, after you hear them frame what we need to do, what would you do if you were one of the ones tapped to do this work? What is your input? What do you think we need to address? What excites the people in your local community and your church? So we're going to talk about that for a few minutes, and then we will let everybody go. So first, I'm going to, let me see, make sure I didn't leave, because I have, I spent my entire hour trying to figure out how to do this. So I'm going to make sure I didn't leave off anything important. I would tell you that this is the thing that excites me. I mean, anybody who knows me will tell you that this is the thing that excites me. I've sort of been wanting to sink my teeth into changing United Methodist processes and practices for as long as I've been Methodist and started understanding about how some of them work. In a previous life, I worked in corporate America and did a lot of organizational building work. So I've long wanted to just, let's just start taking apart these pieces that don't work and put them back together in a different way so they work in a good fit. So this part really does excite me. But I'm going to ask first for if Lottie Chafin would come up and share with us about the petition that's a part of the Next Generation UMC proposal.
Thanks, Jen. Hello, Convo Warriors. I'm really impressed with you all. You're coming back. There's really not much to do in Nashville, so you've chosen the right place. It's an exhilarating place to be. I'm impressed with you. So I just want to tell you, I want to make a confession to you. And my confession is that I watch a lot of HGTV. I watch more HGTV than anyone should watch. I watch all of those reality home improvement shows, Property Brothers, Yard Chasers. I once hung out in the Home Depot for an hour thinking Yard Chasers would discover me and come and fix my yard. I watch all of those, what are the other ones? I can't even remember, but I watch all of them. But I have a favorite. And my favorite is called Love It or List It. Who knows this shit? Yes, right? So for those of you who don't know, Love It or List It involves a couple. One person in the couple is tired of, they both live in a house that doesn't work for them anymore. They have more kids than bedrooms, or it's just falling apart, or just they need a home office, they don't have it. And one person in the couple says, enough. Let's sell the house, move, list it, sell the house, and go find a better house. And the other person in the couple says, no, let's fix up the house, make it work for us, and stay right here where we are. And so in the show, there's a real estate agent who works with the part of the couple that wants to move out. They go searching for houses and they find a better house. And then there's the home repair person who works on fixing up the house and making it what they hope it to be. And the whole show ends, and then the couple debates. And that's the best part. If you've been in a relationship, watching other people debate relationships is the best part. So they try to figure out what they're doing, and then the climax of the show each time is they have to decide, are they going to love the house that just got fixed up, or are they going to list it and move to this new house they found? I think that's our moment, right, for the Methodist Church. Some of us are going to love it, and some of us are going to list it. But I want to suggest to you that loving it involves reforming it, right? Loving it involves fixing it up. We have been locked into, we have not changed and not adapted the way we need to adapt in order to be a church that is as effective as we hope to be in the 21st century. And so the proposal that's before General Conference is to create a commission on the 21st century church that sets about figuring out how do we change the Constitution so it works better for the 21st century. So here's an example of this. In 1956, there's a Judicial Council decision that said only General Conference can decide clergy ordination standards, right? Now in 1956, representatives from central conferences were missionaries. And so the General Conference was all U.S. people. And when the Judicial Council made that decision, it partly was about controlling boards of ordained ministries in other places from being able to ordain pastors that weren't college educated or all these other standards that are easier to be met in the U.S. than other places. The U.S. is at the center of the denomination, and to be a truly global church, we need to move out of the center and be equal with other parts of other regions of the church. And so we think, in order to really fully get to that 21st century dynamic, it's going to require a different constitution. So many, if all of you who tried to reform the church, no doubt have met that kind of, that you run up against some kind of barrier that doesn't make sense. You know what needs to be done, but you hit some kind of barrier that's a legacy that prevents the change that needs to happen. So too, we're challenging to kind of rethink what we do around general agencies. Are we at the right level? Are we at a sustainable level of general agency support? Are our general agencies doing what we hope? They're doing great work. I'm not critical. I would not be critical at all of them. But is it the most important thing? Do we feel like we have an ability to direct our resources and talents towards the most essential things for us now and 4 years hence, then, and then, and then? Can we rethink about General Conference, moving from a pointing finger that says you shall do this, you shall not do that, and instead becomes kind of an open hand that says let's partner together in ministry that is relevant and dynamic and true to this moment of Christ in our midst. So this idea is that we need to rethink how we are as a United Methodist Church and be that church we can become. Be that church that we can become. The one that formed you and one that you aspire to be part of. The one that is really a dynamic transformation force within society and the globe and the country. So I know a commission, the proposal was that the commission would report to a special session of General Conference. And I know commission and special session of General Conference is a rerun you may not want to watch. But I want to suggest that there's a different way of being a commission. This commission, in my dream of a thing, but I'm only 1/4 of the way through the 21st century, 1/5 of the way through the 21st century, I don't see this commission as a behind closed door commission. I see this commission as going out to people and saying, what is the ministry you are called to be? And what is the structure that makes that ministry real in the world? What is it that is necessary in this place? How can we adapt and form a structure that can really realize all the potential that's before you in this place? So I see this as I can imagine the commission being a place of wide open dialogue and a place where we can find again what we had hoped to be a part of. This movement of transformation for Christ's presence and reign in the world. So that's a commission on the 21st century church.
Thanks, Lloyd. Now I'm going to turn to Judy Scottson and Ginger Gaines Sorelli and give us some words and thoughts from their article, which really kind of frames up a lot of the work that we need to do as a denomination. And I want to also say, when we tend to think about commissions, we tend to think about groups of people who go off to do something and they bring a report back to the General Conference, and the General Conference either blesses the report or sends it away. Well, we're not in that space right now, and we're not going to do this work in a year. And we're not going to do this work in 2 years. So this should be a series of teams that reports back to General Conferences for a long time to come, whatever a General Conference is, because we're essentially taking power away from the General Conference and giving it to the regions. And we don't really know what that means yet.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to follow up a little bit on what Lonnie said. The article that we wrote has just come out this last week, if you get the Ministry Matters stuff. So if you haven't had a chance to take a look at it, I encourage you to do that. which does begin to lay out vision and our hope for what can be the future of the United Methodist Church, which is a church which is not the same, but that allows for us to really begin to realize the vision that we feel called to put it into practice. I'm going to read a couple of sentences from this and then say a word following on what Lonnie has just shared. The next generation legislation, which is where we were focused in the beginning, reflects the vision and commitment of so many of us interested in broad reform, that phrase that Jan is talking about and needs to get clear about, intended to address historic, unresolved, systemic injustices. This is something that I have heard again and again, people speaking about and committed to wanting to try to address in a real way. And I'll say something about that in a minute. And to become a fully inclusive anti-racist, which is a technical term. If you know the scholar Ibram X. Kendi, I encourage you to do some reading and study of his work on what it means to be anti-racist, which is a very particular way of fighting white supremacy in our lives and our communities, and an anti-colonial church, which is part of the work that we're talking about in terms of restructure related to our global work. We envision a post-separation United Methodist Church that gives birth to hope, meaning, life-giving connection, and justice everywhere in the world we're called to serve. So one of the things that I want to say is that the Commission on the 21st Century Church, I think, is one of the places that we can begin to think about and to locate this broader, deeper work of reform and justice-making. So it's not just about structure, though it certainly is that, and structure we know is about justice. What does the structure look like? How do the structures either prop up or help free up the issues that we're trying to deal with? So if we're trying to break down white supremacy, what structures are there that are propping up white supremacy? How can we change that? If we're trying to be anti-colonial church, what are the structures we can do to break that down? So I think that the restructuring piece is part of this vision in a very concrete way. The other piece for us is to be really clear about who is at the table. And we began to sort of hear that in what we were saying, but who's going to be part of a commission or the work that we're doing? Do we have folks and voices at the table that are truly representing the various communities that are so important to the body of Christ moving forward? This has been a piece that folks have been very concerned about, and often with very good reason. So we want to make sure that we have a truly representative and inclusive community of folks digging into this work. And the other thing that I'll say, and I'm going to pass it to Junius, pass the microphone to Junius, is that part of what I think we're called to do in this work is to begin to see ourselves as that church that we long to be, and to just begin living into it. The other day, I was at my delegation meeting, and someone had heard a presentation from some other folks, and they said in our group, well, this was such beautiful language, it was so aspirational, my heart felt strangely warmed, but I feel like I need to support the protocol. And I feel so badly that I can't support this aspirational vision because I need to support the protocol. And my arms shot up, and I said, no. So we don't give up the aspirational vision. The protocol is the way, perhaps, that we believe we can get to the aspirational vision. So if we can move through this, do the work of forming a commission or a group to do the deep work of reform, to really study the issues. That's a key piece. The right voices go deep into the issues. Then we can truly begin to be set free. I've heard a lot of people saying, why is this any different from any other time that we wanted to try to be a better church? What's going to make this different? Why would this commission do anything better? Why do we think we're going to stop being, these things that we wanted to stop being, or become the thing that we want to become? What's going to be different? And I think that's a fair question. So I'm hopeful that we'll really go deep into the work with the right people at the table and claim and continue to live into the aspirational vision that we know we're called to live into. And I'm going to let Junius talk about some more of that.
Thank you very much. I'm glad you brought that article up. We actually wrote this article in November, I don't even remember when. So I do want to, before I share it, I want to echo everything that Nadia said and Ginger has said so eloquently. I want to take a moment here and say, before last year, we had our first UMC Next gathering at the Church of Resurrection. I did not know Jean. And one of the greatest gifts and joys I've had over the past year is getting to know Jean and to experience her leadership and her passion and her advocacy. So I want to thank you publicly, thank God for your ministry. So what makes this is a unique moment, I believe, for our church. It's an extraordinary moment. And extraordinary moments call for us to act in extraordinary ways. It requires extraordinary leadership, requires us to push the boundaries of leadership, to think more creatively, to think more with a greater sense of innovation. And so when I think about the future of the post-separation UMC, I see a church that is inclusive, fully inclusive. I see a church that is actively trying to eradicate racial systems of racial injustice. But I also see a church that is alive and vibrant. I see a church that is focused on evangelism, that is focused on discipleship. And so I put my discipleship general secretary hat on for a second. And so we asked to do something, this initiative called See All the People. And the question was, what would happen if we stopped fixing churches and started seeing all the people that God has called us to reach? Which is to say that even in the midst of reforming structures, we can't be so focused on structures that we forget our task of making disciples. Growing as disciples personally, but also actively seeking creative ways to reach our communities, to engage our communities, to see all the people that God has called us to reach. I mean, this is the future, right, of Methodism. I was reflecting earlier today, as I was thinking about this panel tonight. I grew up in Houston, Texas. I came of age at Windsor Village United Methodist Church in Houston. That was my first exposure to Methodism. My first exposure to Methodism was one of vibrancy. My first exposure to Methodism was a church where the Word became flesh in the life of a community. My first exposure to Methodism was a church that was at the center of the life of a community and that practiced radical hospitality. And that was my first exposure to Methodism. And that's shaped how I view the Methodist Church. I never even knew that there were Methodist churches that were not growing. Years later, and it was a complete shock to me, right? And I refuse to believe that this church cannot grow. And I refuse to believe that we can't find creative ways to reach people for Christ. So that when I think about the future of the church, I think about that. The last thing I'll say, I talked about general agencies, there has to be a reform of agencies, right? So we have to think about, well, how do we deliver general church ministry in the 21st century? And part of that is understanding, well, what is most critical? What's mission critical for us, right? What is mission critical for the church? And then we organize around what is mission critical. Now, that could mean that some agencies consolidate, merge It could mean that some agencies are free to spin off. I think we have to be creative in the way that we think about this. Historically, when we've done any reform of general church agencies, it's always been agencies have merged together. And when these agencies have merged together, you know what's happened? What's happened is you just basically have had two agencies who now occupy the same building. And we can't replicate that. We can't repeat that. We have to learn from those mistakes. So as we move forward and we think about the future of general church ministry, now how do we do that in effective ways? But what's most critical for us? That's the first thing I'll say to you. The last thing I'll say to you is as I think about priorities, right? We have to make some decisions, but to prioritize. What are going to be our priorities in ministry? And we were talking about the Episcopal Fund earlier in our breakout group. And the Episcopal Fund right now is, by the year 2022, definitely by 2024, if things continue the way they are, would be insolvent. Now, so what does that mean for us as a denomination? Well, we have to decide if the role of the Episcopal leader is something we prioritize, then that has to be something that we fund. If the role of general agencies are important, then that has to be something we fund. But at what level? This is what I'm getting to. What I'm getting to is that over the last 10 years, what we've done in terms of budget reductions is everything's just cut across the board. Right? We haven't made any hard decisions as it relates to what we're going to prioritize. And what I'm suggesting to you is that we can't go forward together and be effective as a denomination without making those difficult decisions. Bottom line is, Reformation is going to be an exciting time, but it's not going to be easy. It's going to be a hard time, and we're going to make some hard decisions in order to move into a bright and blessed future.
So one more thing I want to add on this point. I'm thinking specifically about the community that I serve in Washington, D.C., Boundary United Methodist Church. And over the last almost 6 years, we've done a lot of reform, and anyone who's done changes in a local congregation knows that it's hard work. But in order to make it work, you have to have a vision, you have to do the study, you have to have a plan, you have to have folks that are willing to see it through, you have to find a way to fund it, and you have to stick with it, you have to pivot if it's not working. All of that is going to be part of what we're going to need to do moving forward. But back to the sort of love it or list it piece, when I got to Foundry Church, there was a whole section of the building which was dark and dreary, and there were people who loved it because they had had such meaningful experiences in that space for many years. There had been a vision to open it up and to create new space for new people to come and to connect. And what I can tell you is that the transformed space that was committed to and is being paid for by the sacrificial giving of the community has completely transformed our lives together. It's brighter, it's open, it creates space for people to connect who otherwise never would. It allows us to allow and invite and support more persons in radical hospitality in our space. And here's the other thing, so doing the hard work, actually changing the thing is my point. We have to change the thing. It has to look different. We have to have the vision for it, we have to fund it, and we have to see it through. It will change our lives. So the structure piece, the vision piece all comes together to make ministry happen and to allow us to connect to more people. The other thing I want to say, because I think it's important to say, is there have been a lot of fear-mongering about what happens if more traditionalists leave the United Methodist Church and how can we really grow, and are we going to be able to grow? And I want to say, I'm going to quote my colleague in the press release or press conference that happened a while back. He said, we may be smaller for a while, but we're not going to stay smaller for long. And I think that part of that vision is that as we move into this space, we're going to be freed up, we're going to be able to make some creative choices, we're going to be more focused on strategic, intentional decision-making that allows us to do things in a truly different way. And the other piece that I want to say around the fear piece is that people say, well, when these folks go, look at what the Episcopalians are going through. Has anybody heard that? So here's what I want to tell you. A church that has shifted and maybe moved toward a more fully inclusive expression of itself is a vital expression of church and will continue to grow. We know that on average, someone did a study in the Baltimore Washington Conference of Reconciling Ministry Churches, growth was higher on average in those congregations than the other congregations in our conference. So check the data. And the other piece is, you know, for us, since I've been there especially, we've been really focusing on discipleship. We've been focusing on small groups. We've been continuing our justice outreach. We've done community development in terms of connecting in the community more intentionally. We've changed our building. Y'all, we changed our worship times on Sunday morning. Now, try that if you haven't. And what we discovered is that everything is up. We had 80 babies born in 18 months at Boundary Church. 80. We've had to change our structure to hold all the babies, to welcome more young families and babies in a church known for our full inclusion and justice work. All right? So I just want, it's a word of encouragement to take that local vision and to remember that's what we're talking about doing on a larger scale. My focus scripture for church growth forever is Matthew 6:33. Who knows what that one is? Seek first the kingdom of God and God's righteousness. And then what happens? All these other things will be added. So we keep our focus, we do the thing that we're called to do, and this new vision will come. We have to dig in and do the work. We have to do it intentionally. We have to do it not at the surface level, and we have to see it through. And we have to find a way to pay for it. How about that? And together, we'll live into, finally, perhaps more fully, the congregation, the communities, the denomination that I think God's calling us to be.
So I think what I've heard, thank you. I think what we heard from all three of the folks who shared here is that we can lean into this and live into it right now. So between now and May, those of you who want to know what they can do, live into being the church that you know the United Methodist Church can be. So just live into whatever that means for your local congregation, live into it. The other thing that I wanted to say, and I should have said this when I kicked this off, but is people want to know why do we need to go through all of this? And why can't we just patch things? Well, if we don't go through this, if we don't do the hard work to do things that Lonnie and Ginger and Judy were talking about, then what we will have is a smaller United Methodist Church with the exact same problems that we have today. And we don't want to do that. So remember in the beginning I asked you to imagine that you were put on a team that would be the commission that would be looking at what we needed to do. So now I want to hear from you, and I'm going to ask Bonnie if you will walk the microphone around as folks raise their hands. I want to hear from you about what you would do.
All right, thank you for this opportunity. I think we need a tremendous cultural change in the United Methodist Church. And it's much deeper than all means all. It's an appreciation of who all these people are. We need to understand what the LGBTQIA+ means and what it means to be in ministry with and for the LGBTQIA+ people. What does it mean to be intersex? What are the unique nuances about what it means to be a trans Black man in many of our cities. What does it mean to live a life as someone who's gender fluid? In my opinion, we need to be a church which cares about being co-creators and co-caretakers of God's creation with God, and to take that seriously. It's too easy for us to drive our cars wherever we want to and have a sense of entitlement about what it means and not worry what it means to be destructive to the environment. In my mind, if there are entities in the church outside of the United States which stay, we need to understand what it means to be global with global equity and full global participation. We need to be a church that has a culture without the isms which infect our very being and all of our systems and structures, just because we are white. Some of these infections are things like white supremacy, patriarchy, being patronizing, and exclusion. It means more than just saying, you are welcome, period, but understanding and spending the time to understand what that means. And if I may tell you a very brief story. First Church Pittsburgh is in the city of Pittsburgh. We have had homeless individuals, I shouldn't use that term, I'm sorry, individuals without homes who have slept on our porches. We recently, for the first time, had an individual die on our porch who'd been part of the hot meal program that we have on Saturdays. This devastated us. And not only that, it devastated us more when we realized that he may have been dead on our porch for 3 days. We decided when we met the members of the family that we wanted to have the funeral at our church that will be tomorrow. And that we wanted to invite family, rather than have him buried in a place that was not a family plot, to have his remains buried in our common area. This has helped us transform our thinking about what it means to welcome all people in a different way. And we've been blessed with a very nice building that we could use in new and different ways. Thank you for listening.
Someone else?
Hi, I'm Emily. I'm traveling with Minnesota. I use she, they pronouns. Thank you. I kind of wanted to build on the idea that was just introduced about nuancing the communities within the UMC, grasping a better understanding of our community members' identities. In order to do that, we must have representation on all of our committees. As a queer person in the UMC, I get told a lot by people who are not queer what I am feeling and what I want out of the UMC. I get talked about a lot, but I don't get talked to a lot. We need to be inviting queer people to the table, people of color to the table, people from different socioeconomic backgrounds. We need to diversify who is making the decisions within the UMC. My hope is that as we continue to grow as a church, we'll continue to grow in diversity, and we will continue to use the privilege that we have to elevate voices of people until we have an equal church.
Amen. Thank you.
Kathy Talley from Virginia Chief Burgers. I want to see us move
Anybody else? You were on the bed.
I want to challenge the idea that what we know is post-colonial. We need to acknowledge that the church as we know it is a product of white people coming into America and stealing the lands of Native and Indigenous folks. And we need to acknowledge that the land that our churches stand on is land that we can be repatriated to those people. And if not that, then some sort of reparations in some way.
I also dream of a church that is more involved in communities and government and recognize that there is a balance between, in the United States and other countries that have various aspects of religious freedom, separation of church and state, but to stay silent on because we're not allowed to quote unquote talk politics in the church, when in the United States, in 2018, there were more than 17 million vacant housing units in the entire country, and a little more than 500,000 people were experiencing homelessness. Yes, we should open church buildings that are not being used, and this is happening some to house some people experiencing homelessness as part of Housing First, but also tackling greater political issues, classism, disability issues.
Anybody else? Some interfaith, excuse me? I know there's been some effort to work with interfaith groups, but I've found in my ministry, and I also have a vision that if we put more energy into interfaith relations, it's a movement toward world peace, and it starts in the communities. And I think it can be very successful starting in our own communities.
Kevin Brown, Kentucky. It's going to sound odd. I just introduced myself with a name and a geographical area. But those who are working on the new structure, I would like us to move beyond the limitations of geographical itinerary. I feel really stuck by geography right now in particular, and also just for the fact that it's difficult for me to utilize my gifts and graces, limited by the state, the conference where I'm from, and also recognizing that I have a two-income family, and so she is, in this case, sort of stuck geographically as well. And I envision us having more fluid structures so that the itinerary, if we still maintain some sort of appointment system, to be able to function without limitations of geography. I'm down here and I'm going across the river to Indiana, across the river to West Ohio, because after this is over, I'm going to have to figure out how I can minister perhaps beyond my state.
We have time for one more. Okay, so I've taken some notes here on the things that people threw out. Go back home and keep thinking about this. This is going to be our reality. No matter what happens, we are going to be figuring out what we need to do to live into and become the church we should be. So, and lots of comments were made about the breadth of involvement and engagement needs to be in that process. And what a seedbed we have in the Reconciling family for starting that work. And oh, by the way, we know how to do it too. So, like I said, this is the part of what we have in front of us that I can get passionate about. So be thinking about it. Live into it in your local community. Many of you already are. I listened to some of the things that we need to have as a part of our DNA that I know churches that do already. So we already have guides for how we do a lot of the things that we need to do. We just need to be intentional about making them part of our DNA instead of having a few churches here and a few churches there that do a good job. So go home, live into it, think about it, talk to other people, so that when we get to the point where we are honestly rebuilding, that we can bring our full imaginations for what that might look like. And not limit ourselves to, well, you know, the Book of Discipline paragraph something else says X, Y, Z, and we need to modify that paragraph. That is not the way we're going to solve this problem. So go reimagine and send us your ideas. So I would like for us to close in prayer. I would like for somebody here who prays in public, which I don't do very often, to volunteer to do that. Thank you. I thought Lonnie was volunteering.
Gracious and loving God, you have proven yourself to be present with us this evening and this day. We are so thankful that your love is deep and wide, and it is amazing that when we experience it, we are reminded of the depth of it. Sometimes we come from local contexts in which we don't always experience that. We may speak about it, we may give it voice, but we don't experience it quite like we do when we're gathered together. So we thank you both for just the experience that we have had and will have tonight and tomorrow. But pray also that in this safe space that we established, that we will sense your leading into the future. A sense of grace that's behind us, that's with us now, and that's there in the future. And help us in this experience of the moment, not to be afraid so much that we can't love, not to be constrained so much by the challenges of now that we are unable to dream about tomorrow. And help us this evening as we continue to close the night and the day, to be reminded of your peace that always passes our ability to understand. We ask this in the name of Christ. Amen.
See everyone in the band in a few minutes. Thank you all for coming back.
course, this is running.